Rain hammered against the windshield as Jake gripped the steering wheel tighter. The wipers could barely keep up with the heavy downpour. He should have stayed at the hotel for another night, but the business meeting had gone terribly wrong. 3 days of presentations, and the client had walked away at the last minute. All that work for nothing. The mountain road stretched ahead like a black ribbon through the darkness. Jake had driven this route before, but never in weather like this. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the pine trees that lined both sides of the narrow highway. Thunder followed seconds later, so loud it seemed to shake his car. "Just get home," he muttered to himself, squinting through the rain. "Just get home and forget this whole trip." The radio crackled with static. He reached over to find a better station when it happened. The car hit a deep puddle and suddenly felt like it was floating. The steering wheel spun uselessly in his hands as the vehicle slid sideways across the wet asphalt. Time seemed to slow down. Jake saw the guardrail rushing toward him. He yanked the wheel hard to the left, but the car wouldn't respond. The tires had no grip on the slick road. The guardrail grew larger and larger until the car smashed through it. With a sound like breaking bones, the world turned upside down. Jake felt himself being thrown around inside the car as it tumbled down the steep embankment. Tree branches scraped against the windows. Metal groaned and twisted. Glass shattered. Then everything went silent except for the steady patter of rain. Jake opened his eyes slowly. His head throbbed, and something warm trickled down his forehead. Blood. The car had come to rest on its side against a large pine tree. The windshield was completely gone, and rain poured in freely. His left shoulder screamed with pain when he tried to move. "Help," he called out weakly, but his voice was barely a whisper. Who would hear him out here? The road was at least 50 feet above him, and he hadn't seen another car for miles. He fumbled for his phone, but the screen was cracked and black, dead. The car's interior light flickered on and off, casting strange shadows in the darkness. Jake tried to unbuckle his seatbelt, but his hands were shaking too badly to work the release. That's when he saw the light moving through the trees. A flashlight beam swept back and forth. Getting closer, Jake's heart jumped. Someone was coming. Someone had seen the crash. "Here," he called out, his voice stronger now. "I'm here." The light stopped moving and pointed directly at the car. Footsteps crunched through the wet leaves and broken glass. Jake couldn't see the person behind them. Flashlight, but he had never been so happy to see another human being. "Don't move," a woman's voice called out. "I'm coming to help you." The voice was calm and confident, like someone who knew exactly what to do in an emergency. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. He was going to be okay. The woman appeared at the broken windshield opening. She was probably in her early 30s, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her clothes were practical hiking gear, and she moved with the sure steps of someone comfortable in the wilderness. "My name is Luna," she said, shining the flashlight on Jake's face, but keeping it angled so it wouldn't hurt his eyes. "Are you badly hurt?" "I don't think so," Jake replied, though his head felt like someone was hitting it with a hammer. "Maybe a concussion." "My shoulder hurts pretty bad." Luna nodded and studied the car's position. "I need to get you out of there before this thing shifts. The tree is the only thing keeping it from rolling further down the hill." She moved around to the passenger side, which was now facing up toward the sky. With surprising strength, she managed to pull the door open despite the twisted metal. Jake watched in amazement as she seemed to know exactly what to do. "I'm going to reach in and unbuckle your seat belt," Luna said. "When I do, you might fall a little bit, but I'll catch you. Ready?" Jake nodded, though the movement made his head spin. Luna's hands were steady as she worked the seat belt release. When it clicked open, Jake felt himself start to slide, but Luna was there, supporting him with both arms. "Easy does it," she said, helping him climb out through the passenger door. "That's it. You're doing great." Once Jake was out of the car, Luna helped him sit down on a fallen log a safe distance away. She pulled a small first aid kit from her backpack and began cleaning the cut on his forehead with practiced efficiency. "You're lucky," she said, dabbing antiseptic on the wound. "This isn't too deep." Head wounds always bleed a lot, but it looks worse than it is. Jake winced as she worked. How did you find me? I didn't think anyone would be out here in this storm. Luna smiled, and even in the dim light, Jake could see it was a beautiful smile. I live nearby. I heard the crash and came to investigate. Good thing, too. You could have been stuck in that car all night. I need to call someone, Jake said, remembering his dead phone. My family will be worried if I don't make it home. Luna's expression grew serious. I'm afraid that won't be possible tonight. There's no cell service out here. The nearest tower is about 40 miles away, and this storm has probably knocked out the landlines too. Jake felt a chill. That had nothing to do with the rain soaking through his clothes. What about the road? Can't we hike back up to the highway? Not in this weather, Luna said, shaking her head. It's too dangerous. The embankment is steep and muddy. You could easily slip and fall again. And in your condition, with a possible concussion, it's not worth the risk. She finished bandaging his head and sat back on her heels. I have a cabin about half a mile from here. It's warm, dry, and I have everything we need to properly take care of your injuries. In the morning, when the storm passes, we can figure out how to get you back to civilization. Jake looked up at the steep, muddy slope he had tumbled down. Luna was right. Even without being hurt, it would be nearly impossible to climb back up in this weather. And he was hurt. His shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat, and he felt dizzy whenever he moved too quickly. I don't want to be any trouble, he said. Luna stood up and offered him her hand. It's no trouble at all. I don't get much company out here. Besides, I can't just leave you sitting in the rain all night. Jake took her hand and let her help him to his feet. Her grip was firm and warm, and something about her presence made him feel safe despite the scary situation. Luna shouldered her backpack and picked up her flashlight. Stay close to me, she said. The path to my cabin isn't too difficult, but it can be tricky in the dark. As they walked through the forest, Luna kept up a steady stream of conversation that helped take Jake's mind off his injuries. She told him about the wildlife in the area, pointed out different types of trees, and explained how she had learned to navigate in the wilderness. Her knowledge was impressive, and Jake found himself genuinely interested in what she had to say. You seem to know a lot about surviving out here, he said as they carefully made their way along a narrow trail. I've been living off the grid for about 5 years now, Luna replied. It takes some getting used to, but I love the peace and quiet. Most people think I'm crazy for giving up modern conveniences, but there's something special about living close to nature. After about 20 minutes of walking, they reached Luna's cabin. Jake was surprised by how nice it was. He had expected a rough shack, but this was more like a luxury retreat. The cabin was built from beautiful logs with a stone foundation, and warm light glowed from the windows. Welcome to my home, Luna said, opening the front door for him. The interior was even more impressive than the outside. The furniture was handcrafted and comfortable, and a stone fireplace dominated one wall. The cabin felt warm and inviting, exactly what Jake needed after his terrifying experience. This is amazing, Jake said, looking around in wonder. You built all this yourself? Luna smiled with obvious pride. Most of it. I had some help with the electrical work and plumbing, but everything else is my handiwork. Can I get you something warm to drink? Coffee, tea, hot chocolate? Coffee would be perfect, Jake said, settling carefully into a comfortable chair near the fireplace as Luna moved around her kitchen. Jake noticed how everything seemed to have its place. The cabin was spotless and organized, but it also felt lived in and homey. Strange wooden sculptures decorated the walls, and there were books everywhere. It was clear that Luna was an intelligent, creative person who had put a lot of thought into creating this space. Here you go, Luna said, returning with a steaming mug of coffee. This should help warm you up. Jake took a sip and sighed with pleasure. The coffee was rich and perfectly brewed. This is exactly what I needed. Thank you so much for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you. Luna sat down across from him, her own mug in hand. You don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same thing. But Jake wasn't so sure about that. Luna had risked her own safety to help a complete stranger. And now she was opening her home to him. Not everyone would have been so generous. As they sat by the fire, Jake felt his eyelids growing heavy. The warmth of the cabin, the comfortable chair, and the exhaustion from his accident were all catching up with him. Luna noticed him struggling to stay awake. "You should get some rest," she said gently. "I've got a spare bedroom all set up. Clean sheets, warm blankets, everything you need for a good night's sleep." Jake nodded gratefully. Luna led him. The collar felt like ice around Jake's neck. For a moment, nothing happened. Luna stood over him, watching his face intently, waiting for some kind of change. Jake held his breath, expecting to feel his mind being invaded or his thoughts being altered. But seconds passed, then minutes, and Jake realized something important. He still felt like himself. His thoughts were his own. The collar was just a piece of metal, no matter how elaborate or frightening it looked. Luna's expression began to change from excitement to confusion. "Give it time," she muttered to herself. The ancient text said it might take a while to take effect. Jake decided to take advantage of Luna's belief in the collar's power. If she thought it was working, maybe she would let her guard down. He relaxed his face and tried to look peaceful, like someone whose mind was being controlled. "How do you feel?" Luna asked eagerly. Jake spoke slowly, trying to sound like someone in a trance. "Different, calm, like everything is going to be okay." Luna's face lit up with joy. "Yes, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. The collar is helping you understand that this is where you belong." Over the next hour, Jake continued to pretend that the collar was changing him. He told Luna that his memories of home were becoming fuzzy. He said that his desire to leave was fading away. He even managed to smile and tell her that he was starting to understand why she had brought him here. Luna was so happy that she started crying. She hugged Jake carefully, as if he might break, and whispered about how perfect their life together was going to be. "I knew you were the right one," she said. "I could sense it from the moment I found you in that car. You're so much stronger than the others." "What happened to the others?" Jake asked, still speaking in his dreamy, controlled voice. Luna's expression grew sad. "They couldn't handle the collar's power. Their minds fought too hard against the changes. But you're accepting it so beautifully." Jake realized that Luna's previous victims had probably fought the collar openly, not understanding that their resistance only made her more violent and desperate. By pretending to be controlled, Jake was buying himself time to figure out how to escape. As the night wore on, Luna began to relax her guard. She had been tense and watchful before, but now she seemed to believe that Jake was completely under her control. She even removed the locks from his bedroom door. "You won't try to leave now, will you?" she asked sweetly. "Why would I want to leave?" Jake replied, forcing himself to smile. "Everything I need is right here." Luna beamed with happiness and went to make them both some tea to celebrate. While she was in the kitchen, Jake carefully examined the collar around his neck. It was held closed by an intricate locking mechanism. But Jake had always been good with mechanical things. The lock was complex, but not impossible. It was designed more for show than for security, probably because Luna believed in its magical properties rather than its physical strength. Jake began working on it carefully, using a small piece of wire he found in the bedroom. When Luna returned with the tea, Jake quickly hid what he was doing and went back to acting peaceful and controlled. "I've been thinking about our future together," Luna said, sitting beside him on the bed. "We could have such a wonderful life here. I could teach you about the forest, about survival, about the old ways." "That sounds perfect," Jake said, though the words made him sick. Luna continued talking about her plans for them, and Jake realized just how deeply disturbed she really was. She talked about children they would have, about growing old together in the cabin, about never needing anyone else ever again. She had constructed an entire fantasy life in her mind, and she truly believed it was all going to come true. As Luna talked, Jake continued working on the collar's lock. The mechanism was tricky, but he could feel it starting to give way. He just needed a little more time. "Luna," he said, interrupting her description of the garden they would plant together, "I'm feeling a little dizzy. Could I have some water? Of course, my love, Luna said, jumping up immediately. The collar's effects can be overwhelming at first. As soon as Luna left the room, Jake worked frantically on the lock. He could hear her moving around in the kitchen, and he knew he only had a few seconds. The wire slipped in his sweaty fingers, but finally, he felt the mechanism click open. The collar fell away from his neck, and Jake felt a rush of relief. So powerful it almost made him dizzy. He was free of the horrible device. But he was still trapped in Luna's cabin with a dangerous woman who thought she owned him. Jake quickly put the collar back around his neck, holding it closed with his hand so it would look like it was still locked. When Luna returned with the water, he was sitting exactly where she had left him, looking peaceful and controlled. Here, you go, Luna said, handing him the glass. Thank you, Jake said, taking a sip. The water tasted normal, which was a relief after all the drugged food and drinks. Luna sat down again and continued talking about their future. But now Jake was planning his escape. He needed to get out of the cabin and away from Luna before she realized that the collar wasn't working. The problem was that Jake still didn't know exactly where he was or how to get back to civilization. Luna had told him they were 40 miles from the nearest town, and he had no idea which direction to go. If he ran into the forest randomly, he could easily get lost and die of exposure. But staying wasn't an option either. Eventually, Luna would realize that the collar hadn't really changed him, and then she would probably do something much worse. Jake decided to wait until Luna fell asleep, then search the cabin for maps or anything that might help him find his way out of the wilderness. It was a risky plan, but it was the only chance he had. As the night grew later, Luna began to yawn. I should probably get some sleep, she said. Tomorrow we can start our new life together properly. That sounds wonderful, Jake said. I think I'll sleep too. The collar is making me very tired. Luna kissed his forehead gently. Sweet dreams, my love. When you wake up tomorrow, everything will be perfect. Jake waited in his room until he was sure Luna was asleep. Then he carefully opened his door and crept out into the main room of the cabin. He moved as quietly as possible, knowing that Luna might be a light sleeper. In Luna's desk, Jake found what he was looking for: a detailed map of the area, with roads and towns clearly marked. He studied it quickly, memorizing the route to the nearest highway. It was a long walk, but it was doable if he could get a head start before Luna realized he was gone. Jake also found car keys in the desk drawer. Luna had a vehicle parked behind the cabin, probably hidden so her victims wouldn't see it and realize they could escape. This changed everything. If Jake could get to Luna's car, he could drive out instead of walking. It would be much faster and safer than trying to navigate the forest on foot. Jake slipped out of the cabin as quietly as possible. The night air was cold and fresh, and it felt amazing to be outside after being trapped for so long. Behind the cabin, just as he had hoped, was a small SUV hidden under a tarp. Jake uncovered the car and tried the keys. The engine started immediately, but the sound seemed incredibly loud in the quiet forest. Jake held his breath, waiting to see if Luna had heard it. A light came on in the cabin window. Luna was awake. Jake put the car in gear and stepped on the gas. The SUV lurched forward onto the narrow dirt road that led away from the cabin. In his rearview mirror, he could see Luna running out of the cabin, screaming his name. But Jake didn't look back. He focused on the road ahead, following the route he had memorized from the map. The dirt road was rough and winding, but eventually it connected to a paved highway. As Jake drove toward civilization, toward safety, toward home, he felt the fake collar fall away from his neck completely. He was free. He had survived Luna's twisted version of love, and he was going to make sure she never hurt anyone else. When Jake finally reached the police station in the nearest town, he was exhausted but alive. He told the officers everything that had happened, and they promised to go to Luna's cabin immediately. But when the police arrived at the cabin, Luna was gone. They found evidence of her crimes, including the journals and photographs of her previous victims, but Luna herself had disappeared into the wilderness. Jake never found out what happened to her. Maybe she was still out there somewhere, waiting for another stormy night and another lonely traveler. But Jake knew that he would never drive through those mountains again. He had learned that sometimes the most dangerous prisons are built by people who claim to love you, and that the most important freedom is the freedom to choose your own life. Jake was home. He was safe, and he was free, and that was enough.
Jake woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs cooking. For a moment, he forgot where he was. The bed was so comfortable, and the room was filled with soft morning light. Then the memories came flooding back. The crash, the rain, Luna finding him. In the wreckage, he sat up slowly, testing his shoulder. It was still sore, but not as bad as the night before. The cut on his forehead had stopped bleeding, and the bandage Luna had applied was still in place. He looked around the room in the daylight and noticed details he had missed the night before. The wooden furniture was beautiful, clearly handmade, with incredible skill. But something felt odd about the room. There were no mirrors anywhere, not even a small one on the dresser. The windows had what looked like decorative metal bars on them, though they were designed to look like part of the rustic charm. Jake got dressed in the clothes Luna had given him and walked out to the main room. Luna was standing at the stove, wearing a simple dress and apron. She looked up when she heard his footsteps and smiled brightly. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "I hope you slept well. I've made breakfast for us." "I slept great, actually," Jake replied, surprised by how rested he felt. "Thank you for the clothes. They fit perfectly." Luna set a plate of food in front of him at the kitchen table. The breakfast looked delicious, and Jake realized he was starving. He hadn't eaten since lunch the day before. "Where are my clothes from yesterday?" he asked, taking a bite of the fluffy scrambled eggs. Luna paused for just a moment before answering. "Oh, they were soaked and muddy from the rain. I put them in the wash. They should be ready later today." Jake nodded, though something about her response seemed a little off. He couldn't put his finger on what bothered him about it. "So," he said, changing the subject, "what's the plan for getting me back to civilization? Should we try to hike back to the road?" Luna's expression grew serious. "I'm afraid that won't be possible today. The storm last night was worse than I expected. The creek that runs between here and the main road has flooded. The bridge is completely underwater." Jake felt his heart sink. "How long do you think it will take for the water to go down?" "Hard to say," Luna replied, sitting down across from him with her own plate. "Could be a few days, maybe a week. These spring storms can be unpredictable." "A week." Jake tried not to panic. His family would be worried sick if he didn't come home. His job would be wondering where he was. But there was nothing he could do about it now. "Is there any way to get a message out?" he asked. "Maybe a radio or something." Luna shook her head. "The nearest town is 40 miles away, and these mountains block most radio signals. I've been living out here for 5 years, and I've learned to be completely self-sufficient." Jake finished his breakfast, trying to process this information. He was stuck here with a woman he barely knew, in a place where no one could find him. The thought made him nervous, but Luna seemed so kind and helpful. Surely she was just as eager to get him back to safety as he was to go. "Well," he said, forcing a smile, "I guess I'm your house guest for a while. I hope I'm not too much trouble." "Not at all," Luna said, and there was something in her voice that Jake couldn't quite identify. "I enjoy having company. It gets lonely out here sometimes." After breakfast, Luna gave Jake a tour of the cabin. She showed him her workshop, where she created the beautiful wooden sculptures he had noticed the night before. Her skill was incredible, and Jake found himself genuinely impressed by her talent. "These are amazing," he said, examining a carving of a wolf. "You could sell these in galleries." Luna's eyes lit up. "You really think so? I've always just made them for my own enjoyment." "Absolutely, you have a real gift." As they continued the tours, Jake noticed more odd things about the cabin. Every door had multiple locks, far more than necessary for a simple house in the woods. The windows were all reinforced, and he couldn't find a single mirror anywhere in the entire building. "Luna," he said carefully, "why don't you have any mirrors?" She paused in the middle of explaining her woodworking process. "Mirrors? Oh, I just don't like them. They make me feel self-conscious." The answer seemed reasonable enough, but something about the way she said it made Jake uncomfortable. He decided not to push the issue. That afternoon, Luna prepared lunch while Jake relaxed by the fireplace. He tried to read one of her books, but he found it hard to concentrate. The book was filled with strange symbols and diagrams that he couldn't understand. The title was in a language he didn't recognize. "What kind of book is this?" he asked when Luna brought him a sandwich. She glanced at the book and quickly took it from his hands. Oh, that's just some old folklore I'm interested in. Pretty boring stuff. Really, let me find you something better to read. She returned with a normal novel, but Jake noticed that she locked the other book away in a cabinet. Why would someone lock away a book about folklore? As the day wore on, Jake began to feel restless. The cabin was comfortable, but he wasn't used to being confined to such a small space. He suggested taking a walk outside, but Luna quickly discouraged the idea. It's still too dangerous, she said. The ground is muddy and slippery from the rain. You could easily injure yourself again. Jake looked out the window. The day was actually quite nice, with sunshine streaming through the trees. The ground looked dry enough to walk on, but Luna seemed so concerned about his safety that he decided not to argue. That evening, Luna prepared an elaborate dinner. She was clearly an excellent cook, and Jake found himself enjoying the meal. Despite his growing unease, Luna seemed to hang on his every word as he told her about his life back home. You mentioned you're not married, she said, refilling his wine glass. No girlfriend either. No, Jake replied. I've been too focused on my career, I guess. Haven't had time for a serious relationship. Luna nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing people together when they least expect it. Something about the way she said it made Jake uncomfortable, but he couldn't explain why. Luna was being perfectly friendly and helpful. Maybe he was just feeling paranoid because of the isolation. After dinner, they sat by the fire again. Luna asked him dozens of questions about his life, his family, his job. She seemed genuinely interested in everything he had to say, but Jake noticed that she didn't share much about herself. What about you? He asked. What did you do before you moved out here? Luna's expression grew distant. I used to live in the city, had a normal job, normal life. But I realized that modern society wasn't for me. I needed something more, meaningful. Do you ever miss it? The city, I mean, never, Luna said firmly. This is where I belong. This is where I was meant to be. As the evening wore on, Jake found himself growing tired again. The wine and the warmth of the fire were making him drowsy. Luna noticed him yawning. You should get some rest, she said. Tomorrow we can start working on a plan to get you home. Jake nodded and stood up to go to his room. As he walked toward the hallway, he heard Luna following behind him. When he reached his bedroom door, she was right there. Luna, he said, turning around. Is everything okay? She smiled, but there was something different about her expression. Something that made Jake's skin crawl. Everything's perfect, she said. Sleep well. Jake went into his room and closed the door behind him. He stood there for a moment, listening. He could hear Luna's footsteps moving around the cabin, but they seemed to stop right outside his door. He tried the door handle and felt his blood run cold. It wouldn't turn. The door was locked from the outside. Jake's heart started pounding. He tried the handle again, pushing and pulling, but it was definitely locked. He was trapped in the room. Maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe the door had some kind of automatic lock that Luna had forgotten to mention. But as Jake stood there, in the darkness, listening to the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth outside his door, he began to realize that nothing about his situation was accidental. Luna wasn't just a kind stranger who had rescued him from a car crash. She was something else entirely. And Jake was beginning to understand that he might be in more danger now than he had been during the accident. He sat down on the bed, trying to think clearly. The windows were barred. The door was locked, and he was miles away from anyone who could help him. For the first time since the crash, Jake wondered if he was going to make it home. Jake barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Sometimes they stopped right outside his door. Sometimes they continued walking around the cabin in circles. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince himself that there was a reasonable explanation for everything. Maybe the door lock was broken. Maybe Luna was just a night owl who liked to walk around her own house. Maybe he was overthinking everything because of the stress from the accident. But deep down, Jake knew something was very wrong. When morning came, Jake heard the familiar sound of breakfast being prepared. The smell of coffee drifted under his door. A few minutes later, he heard Luna's voice through the wood. Good morning, Jake. Breakfast is ready. Jake tried the door handle. This time, it turned easily. He opened the door and found Luna standing there with a bright smile, as if nothing had happened. Did you sleep well? She asked, just like she had the morning before. The door was locked last night, Jake said, watching her face carefully. Luna's expression didn't change. Oh, that old thing. It sticks sometimes. I should have warned you. These old cabins have their quirks. Her answer was so casual, so normal, that Jake almost believed her. Almost right. he said slowly. Quirks. They ate breakfast together, and Luna kept up her usual cheerful conversation. She asked about his dreams, told him about the birds she had seen outside that morning, and discussed her plans for the day. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But Jake noticed things he hadn't seen before. The way Luna watched him eat every bite, the way she positioned herself between him and the front door, the way she never quite met his eyes when she talked about the flooded bridge. I think I'll take that walk today, Jake said, testing her reaction. The weather looks beautiful. Luna's smile tightened just slightly. I really don't think that's a good idea. The ground is still very unstable from the storm. You could slip and fall. Jake looked out the window. The sun was shining, and the forest looked peaceful and dry. It looks fine to me. Trust me, Luna said, and there was something in her voice that hadn't been there before. Something harder. I know these woods better than anyone. It's not safe. After breakfast, Luna said she had some work to do in her garden. Jake watched through the window as she walked around the side of the cabin. This was his chance to explore without her watching his every move. He started by examining the front door more carefully. There were 3 different locks on it, all of them heavy-duty. That seemed like overkill for a cabin in the middle of nowhere. What was she trying to keep out, or was she trying to keep something in? Jake moved to the windows. In the daylight, it was even more obvious that the decorative metal bars were actually prison bars disguised to look nice. He tried to open one of the windows, but it wouldn't budge. Looking closer, he saw that they had all been sealed shut. The cabin was starting to feel less like a home and more like a beautiful prison. Jake remembered the book Luna had taken away from him the day before, the one with the strange symbols. She had locked it in a cabinet, but maybe he could find the key. He searched the main room carefully, trying not to disturb anything. Luna seemed like the type of person who would notice if something was moved even slightly. In a drawer near the fireplace, he found a small key ring with several keys on it. Jake tried the keys one by one until he found the right one. The cabinet opened with a soft click. Inside were dozens of books, all filled with the same strange symbols and diagrams he had seen before. But these weren't just about folklore. They were about binding rituals, ancient ceremonies, and something called a soul collar. Jake's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. The books described rituals that were supposed to create unbreakable bonds between people. They talked about devices that could control someone's will, and they had pictures of metal collars covered in symbols. But the most frightening thing wasn't the books themselves. It was what he found tucked between the pages. Photographs. Dozens of them. All of different men. All roughly Jake's age and build. All with dark hair and similar features. The photos looked like they had been taken in this same cabin, by this same fireplace. Jake's blood ran cold as he looked at the faces in the pictures. These men all looked scared. Some looked sick. Some looked like they were begging for help. And in several of the photos, the men were wearing metal collars around their necks. Jake kept searching through the books, his heart pounding. He found a journal written in Luna's handwriting. The entries were dated over several years, and they told a story that made Jake's stomach turn. Luna had been doing this for a long time. She had been finding men who matched a specific description and bringing them to her cabin. She believed that through ancient rituals and the mysterious collar, she could make them love her forever. The JOURNAL entries described her failures. Men who had tried to escape, men who had gotten sick, men who had fought the collar's influence, and Jake realized with horror that none of the men in the photographs had ever left this cabin alive. A sound outside made Jake freeze. Luna was coming back. He quickly put everything back in the cabinet, unlocked it, then hurried to the couch and picked up the novel she had given him. Luna came through the door just as Jake was settling down to read. She looked at him suspiciously, as if she could sense that something had changed. "What have you been doing while I was outside?" she asked. "Just reading," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is a good book." Luna studied his face for a long moment, then she smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile he had seen before. This smile was cold and calculating. "Jake," she said slowly, "I think it's time we talked about your future." Jake's mouth went dry. "My future? You've been thinking about leaving, haven't you? Going back to your old life?" Jake tried to sound casual. "Well, eventually, yes. Once the bridge is fixed and the roads are clear." Luna walked closer to him, and Jake noticed for the first time how strong she looked, how her hands seemed rough and calloused, how she moved like someone who was used to physical work. "What if I told you that the bridge was never flooded?" she said. "What if I told you that you could leave any time you wanted, but that I really don't want you to go?" Jake felt like the room was spinning. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Luna said, sitting down next to him on the couch, "that I've been waiting for someone like you for a very long time, someone who fits the description perfectly, someone who was meant to be mine." Jake started to stand up, but Luna grabbed his wrist. Her grip was incredibly strong. "You don't understand," she continued, and her voice was getting strange, almost dreamy. "We're supposed to be together. The signs were all there. The storm, the crash, the way you ended up right here at my cabin. It was destiny." "Luna," Jake said, trying to pull his wrist free, "you're scaring me." "I don't want to scare you," she said, and she actually sounded sad. "I want to love you, and I want you to love me back forever and ever." Jake managed to break free from her grip and backed away. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm grateful for your help, but I need to go home. People are looking for me." Luna's expression hardened. "No one is looking for you. I made sure of that." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Luna said, standing up slowly, "that I've been planning this for months. I've been causing accidents on that road every time there's a storm. I've been waiting for the right person to come along, and now you're here." Jake felt the world tilt around him. "You caused my accident." "I've been practicing," Luna said, and there was pride in her voice. "I've gotten very good at it. You're not the first person I've brought here, Jake, but I have a very good feeling that you're going to be the last." Jake ran for the door, but Luna was faster than he expected. She grabbed him from behind, and her strength was shocking. Jake had always been athletic, but Luna overpowered him easily. "Don't fight it," she whispered in his ear. "Fighting just makes everything harder." The other men learned that the hard way. "What happened to them?" Jake gasped. Luna's grip tightened. "They couldn't appreciate what I was offering them. They couldn't understand that love requires sacrifice. But you're different, Jake. I can feel it." She dragged him back to the couch and forced him to sit down. Jake's mind was racing, trying to figure out how to escape, but Luna seemed to anticipate his every move. "Tomorrow," she said, "we're going to have a very special ceremony. I'm going to put the collar on you, and then you'll never want to leave me again, you'll see. It's going to be wonderful." Jake stared at her in horror. The collar, the device from the books, the same thing that had been used on all those other men. "You're insane," he whispered. Luna's face twisted with anger. "I'm not insane. I'm in love. And after tomorrow, you will be too." She locked him in his room again that night, but this time she didn't pretend it was an accident. Jake sat on the bed, staring at the barred windows, trying to figure out how to survive until morning. He thought about the men in the photographs. Had they felt this same terror? Had they tried to escape? Had they fought against the collar? Or had they eventually given up hope? Jake decided he wasn't going to give up. He was going to find a way out of this nightmare, no matter what it took. He just had to live long enough to do it. Jake didn't sleep at all that night. He spent every minute trying to find a way out of the locked room. He tested every board in the walls, every stone around the window, every piece of furniture that might hide a secret passage. Nothing worked. Luna had built this room like a prison cell disguised as a cozy bedroom. As dawn broke, Jake heard Luna moving around the cabin. She was humming softly, a tune he didn't recognize. The sound made his skin crawl. She seemed happy, excited even, about what she was planning to do to him. When Luna unlocked his door, she was carrying a breakfast tray, but this time, something was different. She was dressed in what looked like ceremonial robes, made from deep purple fabric with strange symbols embroidered in gold thread. "Good morning, my love," she said, setting the tray down on the small table. "Today is a very special day for us." Jake stared at her. "Luna, please. You don't have to do this. I promise I won't tell anyone about what happened here. Just let me go." Luna's smile was patient, like she was talking to a confused child. "You don't understand yet, but you will. After the ceremony, you'll see that this is exactly where you belong." Jake looked at the food on the tray. Something about it looked different from the meals she had prepared before. There was a strange, bitter smell coming from the coffee. "What did you put in the food?" he asked. "Just some herbs to help you relax," Luna said. "The ceremony works better when you're calm and peaceful." Jake pushed the tray away. "I'm not eating anything you've drugged." Luna's expression darkened. "You need to eat, Jake. You'll need your strength for what's coming." "No." For a moment, they stared at each other in silence. Then Luna sighed and pulled something from her robe. It was a small bottle filled with clear liquid. "I was hoping you would cooperate," she said sadly. "But I've learned that sometimes people need a little encouragement." Before Jake could react, Luna lunged forward and grabbed his arm. She was incredibly strong, stronger than any woman he had ever met. Jake tried to fight back, but she seemed to know exactly how to overpower him. The needle stung as it went into his arm. Jake felt a cold sensation spreading through his body, starting from the injection site and moving outward like ice water in his veins. "What did you give me?" he gasped, already feeling his strength beginning to fade. "Nothing that will hurt you," Luna said, helping him sit down on the bed as his legs became wobbly. "Just something to make you more manageable." Jake tried to stand up, but his muscles weren't responding properly. The room started to spin slightly, and he felt like he was underwater. Whatever Luna had injected him with was working fast. "Don't fight it," Luna said gently, stroking his hair like he was a pet. "Fighting just makes it worse. Just relax and let it happen." Jake wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but his body wasn't listening to him anymore. He could think clearly, but he couldn't make his muscles work the way they were supposed to. Luna left him alone for a while, and Jake used the time to try to understand what was happening to him. The drug hadn't knocked him unconscious, but it had made him weak and unsteady. He could still move, but slowly and clumsily. When Luna returned, she was carrying something that made Jake's blood run cold. It was the collar from the photographs. Up close, it was even more frightening than he had imagined. The collar was made from some kind of dark metal, covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift and move when Jake looked at them directly. It was beautiful in a horrible way, like a piece of artwork designed by someone with a twisted mind. "Isn't it magnificent?" Luna said, holding the collar up to the light. "I made it myself, following instructions from books that are thousands of years old. Each symbol has a specific meaning, a specific purpose." Jake tried to speak, but his tongue felt thick and clumsy. "Please," he managed to whisper. "I know you're scared," Luna said, sitting down beside him on the bed. All the others were scared too, at first. But fear is just another emotion that the collar will help you overcome. She began to explain the ceremony as if she were describing a wedding plan. She told him about the ancient rituals she had studied, the special preparations she had made, the exact words she would say during the binding process. "The collar doesn't just control your actions," she explained. "It changes how you think, how you feel. It removes your desire to leave, your memories of the outside world, your ability to love anyone except me." Jake felt sick, but whether it was from the drug or from what Luna was telling him, he couldn't be sure. "What happened to the other men?" he asked, forcing the words out. Luna's expression grew sad. "They fought too hard against the collar's influence. Their minds couldn't handle the changes. But you're different, Jake. You're stronger. I can sense it." She stood up and began preparing the room for the ceremony. She lit candles around the bed, arranged strange objects on the dresser, and started chanting in a language Jake didn't recognize. The shadows from the candles made the symbols on her robes seem to move and dance. Jake watched in horror as Luna transformed from a seemingly normal woman into something that belonged in a nightmare. Her movements became ritualistic and precise. Her voice took on an otherworldly quality, and her eyes looked like they belonged to someone who had lost touch with reality completely. "The ancient texts say that the ceremony must begin at sunset," Luna explained, checking an old pocket watch. "The alignment of the earth and sky helps the collar bond with your spirit." Jake tried again to move, to fight, to do anything that might help him escape. But the drug in his system made even the smallest movements exhausting. He felt like he was trapped in his own body, fully aware but completely helpless. As the day wore on, Luna continued her preparations. She explained each step of the process to Jake, as if she wanted him to understand exactly what was going to happen to him. She seemed to believe that if he understood the ceremony, he would appreciate its beauty. "The collar will hurt at first," she said matter-of-factly. "The symbols need to establish a connection with your nervous system. But after a few hours, the pain will fade, and you'll start to feel the changes beginning." Jake tried to imagine what those changes would feel like, and the thought terrified him more than anything else. To lose his free will, his memories, his ability to think for himself. It would be like dying while still being alive. When the sun began to set, Luna returned to Jake's room carrying the collar. She had changed into a different set of robes, these ones even more elaborate than before. The candlelight reflected off the metal of the collar, making it seem to glow with its own inner light. "It's time," she announced, her voice filled with excitement and anticipation. Jake tried one last time to plead with her to make her understand that what she was doing was wrong. But Luna wasn't listening anymore. She was completely focused on the ceremony, completely convinced that she was doing something beautiful and necessary. She approached the bed slowly, holding the collar like it was a precious treasure. Jake could see the symbols more clearly now, and they seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Whether it was real or just a trick of the flickering candlelight, he couldn't tell. "This might feel strange at first," Luna said, leaning over him. "But I promise you, after tonight, you'll never want to be anywhere else." Jake felt the cold metal touch his neck, and he knew that his time was running out. Whatever was going to happen next, whatever the collar was going to do to him, he had to find a way to fight it. He closed his eyes and tried to hold on to his memories of home, his family, his real life. If the collar was going to try to take those things away from him, he was going to make it fight for every single one. The metal clicked as Luna fastened the collar around his neck, and Jake felt his world change forever.